Yes, he did.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
And thanks for joining us for the first Donnybrook of 2021. Thank you very much as we also head into our 35th season on the 9 Network. Can you believe that? Well, this week, a lot to talk about, as you can imagine. Let's meet the panelists who are joining us for this edition, starting with the news director for the Big 550 KTRS, where she's also the co-host of the Jennifer and Wendy Show, Wendy Wiese. Along with one of our founders who was back there in 1987 when it all started, Mr. Bill McClellan of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Another founder who was there back in the day. His haircut was slightly different in 1987, but he is now, of course, still writing for the Riverfront Times, as well as rawstory.com, and he's the host of In the Know on KTRS Evenings on the Big 550. And, of course, Mr. Alvin Reid. Happy New Year, Alvin. Mr. Reid, of course, is with the St. Louis American AM 590 and 97.1 FM News Talk. Well, I got to tell you, everybody, starting with you, Alvin Reid, as if this winter couldn't get more depressing. We had a week like this where supporters of the President of the United States stormed the Capitol, and the mob actually pushed senators and congressmen into their offices, and they took over some of the offices, it turns out. It was, by almost every account, incited by the President of the United States, who appeared at a rally when the House and the Senate were supposed to go through the ceremonial counting of electoral votes. And now, a newly elected representative, Congressman Cori Bush from St. Louis, says that Josh Hawley, the junior senator from Missouri, has blood on his hands because he was among those who were encouraging the people who rioted, in no small part by saying that the election was stolen and he wanted a special commission to investigate it and that he was going to challenge the official counting. She wants him removed from office. What do you think, Alvin?
Well, one is the number of days between, when Donald Trump leaves office. And I think it's an impossibility to remove Josh Hawley. But don't get me wrong. Whatever can be done to silence him, including, removing him from the Senate, would be fine with me. But I think that's just kind of rhetorical talk right now. And I hope this is as bad. It's not bad, but I hope this doesn't just lead to a flurry of just crazy statements by Cori Bush. And I fear that. But I don't want to lose any impact on what happened yesterday and Josh Hawley's responsibility into it. It's a shame. He's disgraced this state beyond any politician probably ever. Stinger sitting in prison.
That's saying a lot.
Nowhere close to what he did.
I don't think that we should disenfranchise the Missouri voters by kicking Josh Hawley out of the Senate. And I would never want to criminalize political behavior. I hated that lock her up stuff. But I remember what the French did to collaborators after the war, where they shaved their heads. And I know we can't do it. It's not practical. But I'd love to see these people who I thought were guilty of sedition have their heads shaved. Now it might not bother Josh Hawley to look like a skinhead. He'd probably be comfortable with it. But, I don't think that we can kick anybody out of the Senate. And I think Cori Bush is going too far with that.
Well, Bill, first of all, I think we need investigations whether the barbers lobby put Bill up to this. I know work's been slow for them.
Does he know any barbers?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he does. Well, first of all, I think Cori Bush is off to a good start, but we could talk about that. I think she's already on cable news a lot, and for a freshman on her first week, she's and I think she speaks, truth to power about it. I don't think I agree with Alvin and Bill that he's not going to be removed from office. I think a bigger question is whether, and I know she's going to be part of this, is whether the Democrats should impeach Donald Trump it would have to be a one count impeachment. It would be just strictly limited to inciting the riot. So it couldn't be about even the phone call in Georgia. It would have to just be a one thing. And where I don't know if I agree with Alvin is this could be a very long 13 days for this republic. And I think we've got the best solution would be the 25th Amendment, which doesn't actually remove the president, as Greg Willard has pointed out, local attorney has pointed out. And,
yeah, but
it does
a different topic.
transfers. No, I know. It transfers power, but I just saying that I think that I think Cori Bush is, at least I love the fact she's speaking out.
Well, I will say about Josh Hawley, I was most disturbed after the rampage yesterday, and supporters of his took over the House and the floor of the Senate and the Speaker's office. And he knew that there was no chance that a commission would be established to investigate what he thought were irregularities or fraud in the election. I wish that he, like Senator Lankford and others, had said, okay, given the situation, I am no longer going to challenge the electoral count. After what happened yesterday, I just felt that he really let the state down. He let the country down by continuing his ridiculous, chaotic, out of control effort. And it was so tone deaf as to what exactly had happened on Capitol Hill yesterday. I'm sorry, Wendy.
Well, he is doubling down just within the last 5 minutes. He has said, I will never, emphatically, I will never apologize. And that's that pool of populism is really kind of dangerous for a politician.
Yes.
I mean, it really is, because once you dip your toe into the pool, I mean, it's sort of like the siren song, because it certainly looks like a quick trip to wherever you want to go. But there is always the risk involved. And that's what Josh Hawley is confronting right now is the risk, and they are sizable.
Good point. So we go to Bill McClellan now. Did he help or hurt his chances for re-election in Missouri? Did he help or hurt his chances to run for the White House in 2024?
Oh, in the first one in Missouri, he's helped himself immensely. I mean, because you have a large swath of Missouri that doesn't read newspapers, that gets all their news from Fox, and now they consider Fox too liberal, and they're getting it from even further right-wing sources. And these people believe that the election was stolen, and Josh Hawley is standing up for them. And so Josh Hawley has helped himself in Missouri. As far as nationally goes, I don't think he's helped himself, because there's a lot of, he's very intelligent and very ambitious, and not in that order. But there's a lot of other very intelligent, ambitious people on the national scene who are going to be able to use this against them. And I think of like Nikki Haley, Tom Cotton. There's a whole bunch of right-wing people who are going to paint him as a sheer opportunist and point out that this populist went to a private school in Kansas City and then went to Stanford and then went to Yale. And when it was time to get his first job, he went to a law firm in D.C. And so I don't think he's helped himself nationally, but in Missouri, big help.
I agree with Bill, but I have a different take. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, agreed, because, the states that it really need to win the presidency, which Biden managed to do this time, he would never, win the states in the actual election. I don't think he could win them in a primary as well. So, and then once again, Missouri's a loser, because quiet as it was kept yesterday, Georgia flipped. The Democrat controls the Senate. What committees are Josh Hawley? Because 7 Republican senators voted for that nonsense. The rest of the Republicans looking at this riot, and they all look like fools. I mean, he's going to be on the garbage detail committee, whatever that is. Yeah, the proud senator from Missouri is on the sewage pipe committee.
Right. Alvin, you're right, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. That because I'm so happy that the Democrats are controlling the Senate. And we're going to have divided government, by the way. It's just going to be divided up in different ways between the progressives and Biden and swing. We're actually going to have real debate now in the Senate. But to Bill's point, I agree with Bill with one asterisk. It was a big loss, but he is right. Bill is right that Josh Hawley's going to be very hard to beat in Missouri. The best hope of getting rid of Josh Hawley just went down the tubes, though, because I think as much as I should have learned after 35 years, 34 years, not to ever say never, I think Josh Hawley took a very good position he had as a possible candidate and just destroyed it in 2024. I
agree.
I think he completely outsmarted himself.
George Will last. Go ahead, Charlie. Sorry about that.
I think he hurt himself in Missouri as well. I think there are a fair number of Republicans who are appalled at what happened yesterday, and I think he's linked to it.
George Will was he only called out 3 people, and obviously he has never been a fan of Donald Trump, and he is persona non grata with the Trump supporters. But for him to call out only by name Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and Josh Hawley, saying that they need to wear the scarlet S of sedition. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I think is going to follow Josh Hawley around, because he did look for a while to be rather centrist.
Exactly. And Josh Hawley, if you can make a verb out of it, he Ted Cruz'd himself. Ted Cruz has been known as the most unpopular member of the Senate almost universally for years. And I'll tell you, the people who are most upset with Josh Hawley right now, no matter what Cori Bush says, are his fellow Republicans. Because
that's the key.
He courts them by making them do this vote, and they have got to be so bitter toward him. And I have to tell you, I think Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz are on, kind of to Alvin's point, put him along with Tommy Tuberville on the football committee, but he has put himself on an island he doesn't want to be on. But the bad news for Missouri is that means he's probably going to run for re-election in 2024.
Just aligned himself with Bernie.
I don't think he's hurt himself in Missouri at all.
Well, maybe not, because memories are short, but I think there's a lot of people who are not fans of his right now. And I'll tell you, Gene Evans, I don't know Gene Evans' point of view, but I want to go to you on this one, Wendy. She, of course, was the executive director for the Missouri State GOP. And this morning on my radio program, she said that she resigned early because of the tone of the tenor of the phone calls she was receiving from Republicans, that they were so out there asking her, why aren't you fighting for the president? Why don't we have military action? Let's have a coup. Let's get buses and go to D.C. And she didn't quit, she said, because she was getting flack from the Democrats. It was from people within her own party. And I think right now, the Republican Party is really a mess, and it didn't have to be. What do you think of what Gene Evans just said?
Well, it is a mess, and not quite. I mean, when you think of the battle, the ongoing battle that has obviously stopped and ceased for the time being between the progressive and the more mainstream members of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party now is living with the aftermath of Donald Trump, who had the pandemic not come along. I mean, I think it's a dangerous game of chicken, and I think a lot of politicians play it. Some to their stock soaring, others to their ruin. And I think that they knew that this was a possibility, all of them, whether it was Ms. Evans at the state level or Josh Hawley or Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham at the national level. It's the game of chicken. And I'd love to say they should have seen it and done something about it earlier, but they were hedging their bets.
Well, for one, she didn't have a long time on the job, but all that has been going on over the last 4 years, as long as this hatred, this vitriol was spewed out, aimed at Democrats, she didn't have a problem with it. And the second she got a face full of it, she quit. So
thank you.
No, I'm sorry. I can't feel sorry for you.
I can't either. It's like she's driving a bus. She sees smoke coming out the engine, and she says, I think I'm going to get off at this stop. And everybody's going, oh, that's really smart of you. I mean, come on. Alvin, you're absolutely right. She was part of the messaging about all the pro-Trump and all the vitriolic, everybody that's not a Republican is a socialist and all this other stuff. And, all the vitriol about Black Lives Matter, all the stuff they've been doing. And now all of a sudden she's getting religion because some people are getting a little worked up. I don't think so.
I feel sorry for her.
I'm not canonizing the woman. I'm just saying all politicians take this chance. It's a gamble. It has not paid off for Donald Trump.
Honestly, guys, I followed her. I don't recall her spewing vitriol at all.
No, but that's the same thing. I didn't, if you are a Republican, national or whatever, and you didn't talk to tamp down this stuff, you are just as guilty as these people who have been running their mouths for 4 years.
The guy at the top doesn't listen to anybody who tells him to tamp down.
Let me defend her. What she was doing was getting candidates elected statewide. It didn't have anything really to do with Trump.
What Ray said. So it's perfectly all right. I'm running against whoever it is. They're a socialist. They are this. They are that. Where was she at to say, like, you know what? Let's quit throwing around this socialism and making people, like.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a socialist. I mean,
no, but I'll tell you.
I'm talking about Missouri. This is Missouri. I'm talking about her in Missouri. And our state is an embarrassment right now, Wendy. And, for her to say, like, I just can't believe it. Well, I said, like, y'all set the state on fire. And now you're saying, I can't believe the fire department can't get here this bad.
I feel sorry for it. And I thought that the Republicans, their ads pretty much look like, their attack ads pretty much look like the Democrat attack ads. I remember when Ann Wagner was saying Jill Schupp is too radical for Missouri. It was exactly what Dick Gephardt used to say about whoever he ran against. And this woman was being a good soldier for the Republican Party, and now they've turned on her. I feel bad for her.
I don't. I think Alvin's absolutely right. She was, it's one thing to work in the party. She was the chairperson of the party at the time. It has never been this vitriolic. And I understand it's partly
in Missouri?
Missouri? Yes.
What was vitriolic?
Missouri.
What was vitriolic this year?
Even the stuff they're saying about Galloway. Yes, absolutely. They've been, and again, I'll grant you, it's part of the national.
Galloway was just your basic Democratic.
They were.
What did they say about Nicole Galloway that was vitriolic? I don't recall. Hey, Ray, you write some punchy columns from time to time. But speaking of columnists, I want to ask you, Bill McClellan, to say a good word or two about Jerry Berger, who we lost this week. I thought that he was a guy who, in his 3-dot journalism, often broke 3-4 stories in a morning. A very hardworking guy. You were his colleague. Share a thought or two.
Well, nobody worked harder than Jerry Berger, because I would write 4 columns a week, but 1 or 2 of them could be off the top of my head. Jerry needed all these items. I mean, he was never not working. And he was fun to be around because he would never say, I don't know. Like if you'd say, Jerry, what's going on with this? He'd say something very definitively, and it might not be right. And he would sometimes come up to me and go like, Bill, I heard something and I thought of you and I'm going to tell you, but you can't tell anybody. And I swear, and I go, sure. And he'd tell me something, and 10 minutes later, I'd see like Harper Barnes, and I go, hey, Harper, I'm going to tell you something, but you can't tell anybody. And I'd tell him, and he'd go, Jerry told me that yesterday. I mean, Jerry just lived to gossip. And he was, and like you say, he broke a lot of stories, and he was fun to read. And there were times he was irresponsible, but he added a lot to the newspaper.
He sure did. Well, thank you for that, and may he rest in peace. Our thoughts are with all of his friends at this time. Okay, Ray, I want to ask you, because you mentioned Cori Bush earlier. She was on MSNBC. You think she's off to a pretty good start? And by the way, her predecessor, William L. Lacy Clay, is going to be with us for the second half of this program on Donnybrook Next Up, along with another retired congressman, John Shimkus. So I hope everyone joins us for that. But you think Representative Bush has started out very well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, she's going to speak her mind, and people will say some of the things. She's just very unfiltered about what she thinks, and I think that's good. And it's a different style than Lacy, and I don't think we need to compare the two necessarily, but I think she's getting a lot of attention for a freshman in Congress, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see, because I do think that the next 13 days are perilous. Right before we came on the air, it was announced that Donald Trump isn't going to go to Camp David all of a sudden. And that's a really concerning sign that these 13 days are very important. And I know we went through this whole impeachment thing, but I could see her being one of the people pushing for kind of an instant impeachment over what happened, not hopefully over nothing but what happened yesterday, because I think it probably is important to put people on record. They can do that overnight, and the vote could be overnight. And the only question is whether he poses a danger to our country over the next 13 days because of his mental state. And anyone that wants to say that's a ludicrous proposition hasn't been watching.
Well, I wish Cori Bush would just kind of hold her fire a little bit and let more experienced and cooler heads be in charge of stuff. And I know that it must be really intoxicating to have all these national people asking you your opinion, but some of her stuff just seems a little bit,
and I would just say,
overdone to me.
Right now the other team is getting beaten. Okay, right. The other team is against the ropes. All right, right now, don't get sucker punched by something Democrats do. Now, I agree with you, Ray. I think the man is completely out of his mind. And I've always believed in situations like that, there is some kind of protocol where the government knows the president is nuts. Just, we can handle this. Now, if it was 2 years ago and if we had to play out like 2 years and all this was going on, that's another thing. But I said, just don't do what he tells you to do. Let's try that for once. Now, if he comes on national TV and says, burn it down, tear up the country, then arrest him and put him in jail.
I would say with Representative Bush, I saw her on MSNBC earlier this week, and she was talking about increasing broadband access. And I said, that makes a lot of sense. I think Republicans will support that too, because you've got kids studying at home now, and they will be forever, I guess. And that will really equalize level the playing field and provide educational and other opportunities for people. So I love that. But then Casey from Channel 5, Casey Nolan, had a wonderful interview with her. But she also said in this interview, I was in Ferguson and I stared down tanks and I dodged rubber bullets. Well, truth be told, there were no tanks in Ferguson. She's using verbal shorthand there to describe armored vehicles. And there technically were not rubber bullets. I mean, there were projectiles which could hurt you, but rubber bullets can be deadly, as we know after the Red Sox in 2004. And I just think that if she's a representative talking about defunding the resources of the police, she should speak with precision and know exactly what the police have.
Come on,
and
Charlie,
I don't think
really.
Yeah, I do. She is a member of Congress now. And don't tell me that there were tanks in Ferguson, because there were not.
I feel like doing a no tanks joke, but I won't. I mean, come on. I think to argue.
I get you, Charlie. I get your point. It's time. You cannot, when the other side starts talking that crazy hyperbole, and we've had 4 years of it, okay? And it's just disgusting. Don't fall into that same trap. Always, be as close to the truth as you can, and that serves everybody better. I think it was just a slip of the tongue.
I'm sorry if I'm looking at an armored vehicle and call it a tank. I don't think that's the point. I think I didn't like it when she used the phrase defund the military right away. I mean, there's going to be times she's going to say stuff, but she's speaking from the heart. And I'm telling you, she's going to be a person of some note. And I think that's good. I think Alvin was talking about our representation in Senate, and I understand that point. But I think she's she definitely has a sense that she's speaking for St. Louis.
Well, let me ask you, Alvin, about the rollout of the vaccine. It's been slow. And we were talking about this on one of the last Donnybrooks before the end of the year, where we were hopeful, that things would get going, maybe because they rolled it out during the holiday week. But right now, I mean, the Post-Dispatch is interviewing healthcare providers, and they don't even know how to get it. It seems like it's just not working.
Well, in the midst of all this, we had, I'm telling you, this goes right back up to the Oval Office. And, and then governors like Parson, where they're so busy fighting this non-existent thing that COVID just got pushed to the back burner. If it's slow and you're the president, hey, point A, we got to get the vaccine to the people. Point B, we got to do it faster. In the next 12 hours, I want little things telling me exactly how we're going to do that, and then we're going to do that. I mean, grown-ups are coming back in to the White House, and I think by Valentine's Day, we'll be past where we should have been at this point based on what the government said, because the government has no idea what's going on because the government has been led by just a man that's out of his mind.
Okay, no argument there again.
I don't have a great deal of confidence right now in the, Dr. Mimi Vo has been talking a lot, or made headlines before, who's a provider, and healthcare providers in the city who don't happen to be affiliated with major hospitals are not able to get vaccinated. And I don't know about you, but to Alvin's point, the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services does not inspire a lot of confidence in people right now.
Oh, but it's not just Missouri, Ray, and I agree. Think that characterization is unfair because it's across the country. Sure. And I hope you're right, Alvin. I hope if President-elect Biden, if he does enact a mask mandate, even though it's toothless, in terms of, just ceremonially, it'll make a difference, I think.
Okay, folks, that's all we have for this first half of our first Donnybrook for 2021, but we encourage everybody to stay tuned because on Donnybrook Next Up, just moments from now, we're going to talk to two former members of the U.S. House of Representatives from the St. Louis area. We'll talk to John Shimkus, Republican, now retired from Illinois, and Lacy Clay, Democrat, now retired from Missouri. So that's to follow. Thanks for joining us, but don't go away.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Thanks for joining us for Donnybrook Next Up. This is the portion where we talk to newsmakers and those who have actually formed shared policy, created the laws that rule the land. And today we have two retired lawmakers with us. John Shimkus, Republican from Illinois, now retired. Lacy Clay, Democrat from Missouri, now retired. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the 9 Network.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie.
Well, Congressman Clay, I'll start with you, and we'd also like to hear you, Congressman Shimkus, on the same question. Just your general thoughts on what happened yesterday as supporters of the president stormed the Capitol, where you worked for the past 2 decades.
Well, I'll go first, Charlie. And I was present, and I think John was present on 9/11 in 2001. And on that day, we saw the Pentagon go up in smoke. We were rushed off of the Capitol grounds, and it was a day that I would never forget. But yesterday, we witnessed domestic terrorism and incited by a president who stoked the flames of hate, who stoked the lies about voter fraud, and sent a angry mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the procedures that were happening in the U.S. Congress. In other words, to stop the certification of the Electoral College votes. And what we witnessed was a shame. It was a day that will live in infamy as far as this country is concerned. And this administration should be ashamed of what happened.
Congressman Shimkus?
Yeah, it's interesting Lacy brought up that because I use that. It's the exact example in some media I did today. The 9/11, I think Flight 93 was headed to the Capitol. If you've flown into Washington, you know that the White House is hard to see. You just go down the mall and you hit the Capitol. And so Todd Beamer, Flight 93, Patriots, and we had foreign adversary, right? Al-Qaeda, who hijacked the plane. What made yesterday so sad and disappointing and it was that these are our own people. These are U.S. citizens that really attacked what we would consider the sacred temple of democracy, and running wild, really mocking the elected leaders of our country. It's the worst thing I've seen in my 24 years, and I agree. I mean, it took me about 4 days to say, okay, the president won. I got attacked, but now I look like a brilliant guy. And he did this. He intentionally continued to inflame this debate and marched those radicals up to the hill to do their dirty deed. I'm just disgusted.
Wendy?
There have been stories. Obviously, we're still in the very early hours of this story and reporting this story. A lot of questions about the Capitol Police, and I thought the two of you obviously have a unique perspective in terms of your views of. Was there some type of breakdown? I mean, there was right-wing chatter for days, apparently, in sites most of us have no idea. We wouldn't know how to get there if we had a map. But on the internet, that people knew that it was going to happen. So you would have expected an increased police presence. What are your thoughts on what happened with the Capitol Police yesterday? Congressman Clay, would you like to start?
Sure. One of my security sources who was in on a meeting about securing the Capitol on Monday indicated to me that the sergeant at arms and the Capitol Police chief were very lackadaisical, not really interested in adequately securing the perimeter of the Capitol. So it was very strange to me that to hear that from someone on the inside who shared that with me after yesterday, after all of the chaos had occurred. And then when you look at the video, you see that really these rioters were treated with kid gloves, and it was almost like the police were ordered to stand down. Now, I can't verify that, but I'm sure there will be investigations to see just what occurred and why.
Yeah, and I'll just say, it's obviously a failure. I don't know why. I mean, for people to be in the Capitol unescorted, that by definition is a failure. There will be an investigation. Those who allowed this to happen and those who may have stood down, we prayerfully hope that they'll be held accountable. I mean, it's just not acceptable. And it was, again, sad sight. They shouldn't have, and I don't know what. I can understand the only other concern is if you brought the National Guard surrounding the Capitol, then you have military-looking guys there, and you get into all the posse comitatus and all that type of stuff. But they definitely weren't prepared for a city because they had to call the Capitol Police in. The Capitol Police not the Hill police. I mean, the DC police, they're used to dealing with these large crowds. The Capitol police were not. So I think they had to call in the DC police to help them with this mob when it started getting out of control.
Hey, first of all, it's nice to see both you fellas. And a quick question for each of you. First, for you, John, your successor, Mary Miller, whose husband is a longtime politician in Illinois in the state legislature, got in a little bit of hot water Tuesday, as I'm sure you know, when she was speaking at a rally in D.C. and quoted Adolf Hitler, said that Adolf Hitler was right about at least one thing, whoever controls the youth controls the future. And a lot of people said, this is really inappropriate, talking about Adolf Hitler. And I want to, what did you think of that? I mean, you were always pretty careful with your words, and you're a West Point guy. And I mean, I can remember, you've always been careful with your words. What did you think about your successor quoting Adolf Hitler?
Yeah, I've always been careful, especially around you, Bill. So I learned that.
I can remember, John.
But having said that, I've answered this question twice today. One was real early in the morning on a station down in Carterville, Illinois, WJPF. And this is the way I answered it. I would never quote Adolf Hitler. I would never, with my background in Europe and, having gone to the Holocaust museums and going to concentration camps, I don't care if he said his mom was good. I would never quote him. What I did say was, to make her point, she would have been best to quote Proverbs 22:6. And I train a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. That's a better thing to talk about training children than quoting Adolf Hitler.
Okay, and Lacy, my question for you is, the Democrats have just elected, what's Joe Biden, 78 years old, and put Nancy Pelosi, reelected her. And I know you supported Nancy Pelosi in the past, but isn't it about time that the Democrats try to get a little younger?
Well, let me say this. In my instance, Bill, the torch has been passed to a younger generation, and that's what really yesterday was about too. You must be able to transition when the people decide that your services are no longer warranted and they vote you out. Then we need to have an orderly and peaceful transition. And I think, and that's the point I've tried to make by reaching out to my successor, Congresswoman Cori Bush, and helping her in transition and talking to her. But it also goes to show you what happens in the case of someone like Trump, that the voters don't adequately vet someone. They put in someone who has never had experience in government, who doesn't really appreciate governing or meeting in the middle in order to solve problems. And so sometimes the voters get what they deserve. And in this instance, I think they did. They got what they deserved because they didn't adequately vet Trump, or they just couldn't bring themselves to vote for Hillary Clinton. And so in the case of Pelosi and Schumer and Clyburn, until the Democratic caucus determines they are too old, then I think they are the best fit at this time for the U.S. House and Senate, as well as Biden. There's a very capable vice president about to step in that can fill those shoes also in the person of Kamala Harris.
Okay, thank you, Lacy.
Reid.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we got a long history in this country of not criminalizing our political opponents. My own bias is I thought Jerry Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon, for example, in 1974 was an act of great statesmanship. Of course, I was wearing a different uniform at the time. But my question for you both is, in as much as in the past week, Donald Trump has certainly had probable cause of two very serious crimes. One being attempting kind of mob-like with a Republican to influence the outcome of Georgia's election. And then the second was arguably inciting not only a riot, but an act of domestic terrorism. Now, those are both just probable cause. Do you think either they will or should proceed with prosecution of Donald Trump starting, say, January 21st?
John, you take it first.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the current debate is whether we exercise the 25th Amendment or we go through impeachment processes. The impeachment would take too long. That's kind of off the table. When I got asked about the 25th Amendment today, I kind of stumbled around because, but I think that has some legs. I think just because you don't know what this guy will do in his last couple of days in office, and I mean the talk about doing blanket pardons of all these folks. I think that's the immediacy. Political retribution is what you see in third world countries when the out party does it, and I've experienced it with all my travels and following these countries. And I would say this: if there is bona fide criminal activity, he should be held to the rule of law. But for political expediency, you don't want to make this guy a martyr. We want him to go. We want him to go away.
And as a follow-up to that, I agree with John. The impeachment process will take a while, and there's no guarantee that they can get to the 2/3 necessary in the Senate to try him and find him guilty. The 25th Amendment is a more attractive option, and apparently Speaker Pelosi wants to pursue dual tracks here. But today I just heard that the acting U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia is also looking at holding the president accountable as someone who may have committed the crime of inciting a riot yesterday. So it'll be interesting to see going forward how they deal with this president's role in yesterday's riot.
Well, Lacy, during your long political career, I know you never thought that you would see a black man and a Jewish man elected into the Senate from Georgia on the same day a Confederate flag was getting paraded through the Senate halls. But I'm interested in I'm sure in the last, more than 24 hours, you've talked to a lot of Republicans, including Congressman Shimkus, but what is the feeling you are getting? And I really want to ask, have you spoke with Roy Blunt since all of this happened? But what is the sense you're getting from the, Republican Party right now?
I have not spoken to Senator Blunt, and I'm sure he's had his hands full in the last 24 hours, Alvin. But what the sense I'm getting from my former colleagues is that they have been let down by this president. They have, and even to hear people like Lindsey Graham admit it after these 4 years, they now have buyer's remorse, and they are ready for this nightmare to end. And that's the kind of sense that I get from my former colleagues, be they Democrat or Republican, because this is not the way you transfer power in this country. It's never been done like this. It is a total rejection of all of our norms, all of our processes and history. And it's a tragedy And that's why I can hear it in John's voice, is that we are in danger at this point in our history, because with 13 more days to go in this administration, no one knows what to expect or what will occur over those almost next 2 weeks.
And Congressman Shimkus, if I doubt he'll do it, but if Josh Hawley called you on the phone right now, just what would you tell him? What would be the one piece of advice you would give him?
I would tell him that he was part of this, and I think Claire was a little more out front than what I would have been. But there's culpability. Charlie and I've talked about this a couple times. What's driving? Charlie's followed me pretty closely. He knows that I've kind of tried to move away tactfully from the president. But some people were all in. Lacy knows. They drank the Kool-Aid. And then some, why were they still on board? They were still on board because of the base. Trump is not a Republican. He's a populist. He has more Democratic policies than Republican policies. He, in essence, usurped our party. And when you get in our place, Lacy knows them, there are people who want to be around power and position, and they kind of sold themselves off. And so I think, and this is in my textbook, I'm going to be teaching class in a couple weeks. And politicians use the moment of time for their own political self-interest. And I would say Josh Hawley did the same thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, Congressman Shimkus, I think you parted ways with the president over foreign policy in Syria. You made that official divorce about more than a year or so ago, if I do recall. But I do want to jump in here because not everybody can see every video, but I did see some videos today where the Capitol Police were fighting a storming mob very violently. They were completely overpowered, but I wouldn't say that in all instances they were opening the door and welcoming the mob. So I just want to say that. And I think in the days and months to come, we'll be able to see exactly what happened and why. But let me ask you, when you see these guys who walked in and sat in Nancy Pelosi's chair, or when they were rummaging through the desks of the Senate, now none of them were wearing masks, of course. So law enforcement should be able to identify them relatively easily. How much, John, do you think, the FBI or others, how much resources should they put into tracking these people down and then seriously prosecuting them so that they face some time in the Gray Bar Motel?
All hands on deck, 100%. They should be all in. I mean, we're a country of the rule of law. And I think my colleagues are on both sides, obviously the Democrats, but my Republican colleagues, they don't want to countenance this. I mean, as Lacy said, those who are still strong Trump supporters obviously feel betrayed. And it was those folks who got in the Capitol that really turned this thing into a farce. Let the objections occur, let the votes occur. I think we were all expecting that to happen and then get to resolution. But I hope they throw them in the clink and throw away the key. I mean, I am just so disgusted.
Lacy? Congressman Clay?
Looks like he must have frozen up.
He might have done that. Okay, he'll be back. Wendy, do you have a question?
I do. Looks like the screen might be frozen. John, the future of the Republican Party obviously unclear at this moment. Is there a particular hope that you have in terms of leadership in the days after, in a world that is post-Trump? And then a second follow-up question: do you anticipate further chaos? Because I was concerned enough about him having a rally the day of the inauguration on the 20th, and I'm beginning to wonder, how much worse could this possibly get?
Yeah, I think one of the benefits is hopefully in the day of the inauguration, because of COVID, crowds will be down, Obviously, invitations are very narrowed. I'm not involved in that anymore because I'm not congressman, so I'm not getting invited anyway. But having said that, I'm not. I think the big fear is there a post-Trump, and even for our party. I mean, he raised a lot of money after the election for some political action committee. I think some of the reasons why these Republicans are still supportive is that they see that and they see that base. And you all are political observers. You know that what drives people to the poll is emotion, and he sure can create emotion. So the answer is I believe in the two-party system. I know why I'm a Republican. I'm going to stay there. But we have to extricate ourselves from him on our values and not charismatic personalities or Trumpism. And I think that's going to be very, very difficult unless he voluntarily leaves the public stage. And I don't think he's going to go anywhere unless we throw him in jail. But then he'll be another created martyr.
John, one of your Republican colleagues from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger, suggested the 25th Amendment. You know, that I guess the vice president and the cabinet get together and push Trump out. Do you think that's realistic, and do you think it might happen?
Well, I think only because we don't know what's going on in the mind of President Trump. And I think some people, based upon yesterday, are more scared today than they were 2 days ago. And that might be feeding this. Now Adam he's the dean of the Republican delegation, great record. He's also historically been not in the 100% Trump camp. He's been a critical quite a bit. I'm really proud of him. So we will see, but it'll take more than just Adam Kinzinger. It'll take the Mitch McConnells and the Kevin McCarthy's. Just a side note. So Trump did better in the presidential race than everyone expected. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Part of the Republican success is Trump did well in some of these districts that allowed us to take back a lot of these seats. So there's a political kinship with the House Republicans because it was that presidential campaign that helped us close the gap. So I just don't know how much you're going to get, even though in their heart they know they should. I'm not sure they'll go all the way.
The Capitol Police Chief has just resigned. I wasn't sure if anybody had seen that on their phone.
No, I had not.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw it.
2-minute warning, Ray. 2 minutes to go.
Should we give Lacy a chance to respond to the things John said when he was gone?
They were brutal. They were brutal.
It was awful. It was awful.
I thought they were friends.
John, you were part of the, in fairness to you, your party was really the subject of a hostile takeover by Donald Trump in 2000.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And who do you see, and Lacy, you too, who do you see as, well, obviously on the Democratic side, I think it's pretty well set for a while, hopefully. But certainly on the Republican side, if you had to name 3 or 4 people that you think have the best chance in 2024, who would they be on your side?
Well, it's interesting because you now the former UN ambassador, former governor of South Carolina, help me out. You guys know the name.
Haley.
Yeah. I think she threaded the needle real well, where she joined the administration, kind of brandished those credentials, but she got out before she's really tainted by it. But you see, I mean, what are these 12 senators? What did they do? I think they were playing for that Trump base for the next election. And so any of those might do it, but, hopefully based upon what happened yesterday, they won't be considered, credible, but they will be by that percentage. I don't know. There should be more. I don't think you'll see a resurgence of a Bush or, I don't know Jeb that well. I do know John Kasich pretty well because I served with him. I'm not sure if he's up for it again. So those are 3 names that the governing conservatives. I've already broke my. I know there's no time left. Governing conservatives versus chaos conservatives, and we need a governing conservative.
Thank you very much, Congressman John Shimkus. Appreciate you joining us today. And Congressman Lacy Clay, thank you very much for joining us. I know you're writing a book, and we can't wait to read it when it's out. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on Donnybrook Next Up. We wish you the best. Happy New Year. And make sure you keep it tuned to the 9 Network.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.